from bankruptcy to fame and fortune, and it was slated for abandonment back in the late 90s, and this consortium of volunteers, historians, railroaders, they banded together and managed to acquire the railroad for $1 from the owners, the Sierra Pacific Industries, who found it very capital intensive to keep it running. They had a lumber mill up at Martell. This is a very capital intensive operation for volunteers to keep going. It's worth it because there's so much history tied up into it, and you'll see that it's also a resource for studying geology. And I want to emphasize that the geologic community has a role to play in keeping this historic treasure open and running. And 100% of your ticket price, which I think is a bargain, goes into maintaining the rails. You can't imagine the costs involved. And this is a federally regulated railroad. It's also regulated by the California Public Utility Commission. When you get two bureaucracies like that together, you can imagine just how much oversight and regulation is imposed on these volunteers. So they are dependent on our efforts to do these trips. They run their own recreation trips, and they scrape by. So they're always welcoming additional donations if you are inclined. I have to plug that because I support the railroad as much as I can by putting these trips together. We have, there are three of us co-leaders today. Tim McCrink back there, raise your hand. Tim is retired CGS, California Geological Survey, CGS. I should also say ex officio interim state geologist. And Pete Mullen, where is he? He is CGS mapping group. And the other fellow that we sometimes have is Matt O'Neill. He's not with us today. He is responsible for putting this map together from two geologic sheets. Pete will mention that in a moment. So the other thing I want to mention is that this is a very unique field trip in that the outcrops are within a few feet of the rail, and sometimes on both sides of the track. Because I should do a sidebar. I'm a railroad aficionado, history, and I'm associated with a railroad history group in Placer County. And part of my role, I do field trips on the railroad, or railroad history. And because the railroad's built through rocks, they have to stay level, and the topography is going like this. So there are a lot of cuts, and railroad outcrops are the best. And because you have these long cuts, because the railroad has to go like this, whereas roads go over and around. So there's fantastic geology along railroad routes. And so this is a good example. You'll see a 2-mile long continuous outcrop through the melange, which is just amazing. And so we'll see a lot of unique features that you won't see anywhere else in the Sierra foothills, and all on the same route. Regard these as our field vehicles. We simply use them to get from one outcrop to the next. And let me point out on the map, our stops are in red. The mile markers are in black. And we actually will stop at probably 15 stops, more than what's listed on our basic stop list. They are are additional stops. We call them bonus stops because we'll have extra time today. It's a longer trip than what has been done in the past. And so we're gearing this up for preparation for the GSA convention in April. 3 years ago when we started doing this, we thought, oh man, that's a long way away. You know, hopefully we can do this for conventions and conferences and use it for education. We've had a lot of both university people on board and community college, high school teachers. This has a lot of potential for educational applications. You'll see features on this trip that are in textbooks that you might not see in the field or in real time. So it's very unique. The other thing I want to mention regarding safety, we'll be in and out of the cars. Wait for your operator to tell you when you can safely get out, because sometimes we pause and then move forward and move back. When you get out of the cars, sometimes the ballast is lower than the ties, so it can be quite a drop. A lot of the ballast is cobbly material. Be careful when you walk around that you don't, just watch the ground. Another rule with railroads, do not ever step on the rail, step over the rail. Rail is often slippery, and that's a universal no-no. No stepping on the rail, because you can slip off and have an injury.
Speaking of safety,
if you have, how many do you have of those?
probably at least 20.
Okay.
So as many of you.
I would encourage you to wear a safety vest. It just adds to our.
Like those back at the end of the day.
Be aware of where who's where. Okay, so I'm gonna turn the podium over to Pete and Tim.
All right, yeah, I'm Pete Holland. I'm with CGS. Everyone's got a map, right? Okay, yeah. Okay, good. Yeah, they're up here. These maps.
Trying to get one of the out.
At CGS.
Yeah, go ahead.
The western half is the Ione 7.5 minute quad. I think that was 2015. And then the eastern half is the Jackson 7.5 minute quad. It's 2019. They don't exactly match up. It's kind of like right where the fold is where they match up. They don't exactly match up because in those 4 years in between, we kind of started seeing things a little differently. You know?
No.
Yeah, sure. You spend enough time out there, you're like, wait, this is actually this unit. Anyways, the green stuff is Mesozoic, right? A lot of Jurassic units we're going to see. The purples are serpentinites, ultramafics, and then the browns are the Cenozoic overlap sequence. So we're going to see this stuff. We're going to mostly stop at the bedrock, Mesozoic, Jurassic outcrops on the way up. And then when we turn around, we're going to come back and stop at the Cenozoic overlap outcrops, just to kind of group things together in a geologic age sort of way. Yeah, but that's basically okay. A little bit of background, I guess. So, yes, CGS had compiled the Sacramento sheet, 250K Sacramento sheet in I think 1980. Dave Wagner, Trina Bedrosian, George Cicito, they worked on that. Filed a lot of sources, and then in 2014 or so, the minerals group at CGS wanted to look at the radon hazards in the foothills of Amador County, Calaveras County, Tuolumne County, those three counties. And so they had, I'm in the geologic mapping group at CGS. They had some of us in the geologic mapping group look at the foothills, because mostly CGS has been mapping in the Coast Ranges, doing new maps in the Coast Ranges. Napa sheet was recent, Monterey, or Southern California. So really, we hadn't done any mapping in the foothills in a long time as an organization. And we looked at some of the older maps and thought, you know what, there could be details maybe added to this area. So we proposed, we get money from USGS to do our mapping, and the state will match that. So the USGS has this program called State Map. They give all the state surveys money to do mapping, and so we do about 3 or 4 maps a year through the State Map program. And it was the first time we said, okay, let's do some state mapping in the foothills. And we decided that the San Andreas 100K, which this is a part of, could use some improved mapping. A lot of the quaternary units were mapped. And just when the source maps had been made in the 50s, and some of this goes back to Lindgren, Waldemar Lindgren, or Ransom and Turner, 1900. And so that was, in some cases, that was the best source maps that we had, was 1898. And so we thought, you know, we could spend some time making maybe some more detailed maps of this area. And it's just so fortunate that there's this more or less unused railroad tracks here. And so we got to know the railroad. Jim Wood is already, I knew him, he's knows a lot about just the foothills geology, the clay hazards. Just he's a person that's well known in these parts, and he just happened to have one of these feeder cars. So it's kind of like a culmination of events that this came to be. So I would say, I think that's all. I'll save my talk till we get up there on the outcrop. One other thing, just in terms of safety, we're going to see some really awesome examples of inverted topography on this, where what used to be the bottom of channels is now the ridges in the form of the Merton conglomerates. And so there are just these hard cobbles of rounded andesite all throughout the tracks and along the tracks, and a lot of the cuts are into this Merton conglomerate. And so just be really careful, because nice rounded cobbles all over the place. And we've seen people slip and fall on these trips, just not negotiating and navigating these cobbles. So be careful with that.
Tim, do you want to say anything? So a lot of these cars, some of the cars have seat belts. I would encourage you to wear them if you have them in the car. Geologists tend to look around and not pay attention, and they've got their camera like this, and fortunately we keep our speed down, so even if you fall out of the car, it's
Nobody does that.
It's not likely someone will be killed, but still, we're very concerned about that, so wear your seatbelt. Again, don't get out of your car until your operator gives you the high sign. This will probably be, when we return at 4:30, everybody's going to be pretty tired and head out. I want to tell you now that we would like people to think about how we're presenting this event. And if you have comments after you've been on the trip, we want to hear them. And we want to know if there are things that we could, from your perception, there's a lot of experts here. We want to know what you think, and if you have something to contribute, please let us know. The guidebook and the content on this trip is dynamic. It's changing. Some of our guidebook material doesn't resemble our first version, and we're encouraging people that have expertise, continuing research going on right now to contribute to this. And I think Dave Simabakura at Sac State is going to be, we're drawing him in to contribute to the tectonic story. If you take photos, we would like to have you contribute those to our collection, because when we're talking and trying to keep people rounded up, herded is a good term. We don't often think about taking photos of these groups, and so that could be a good advertising media down the road for us. So, any questions? Yeah. Before we leave, there's a porta potty there. We have porta potties distributed on the route. When we leave here in just a few minutes, we're going to spend some time crossing some highways before we get to the long stretch where we can start stopping and looking at rocks. So let me tell you about how these cars are organized. If you're in a group, grab one of the seats in these gang cars here. If you're in a single person, you're welcome to ride in one of these private cars. That some of them have just one extra seat. There's a couple that have several seats. So all these cars are open for seating, except for this one, which is our official CGS field vehicle, and so our leaders are going to be in this car. So, okay, if you have no other questions, you are welcome to board.
Hey, Jim.